Hey, it's Dave Brown here, host of Now with Dave Brown on AMI. Check out this latest highlight from the show. It's been 50 years since the Summit Series between Canada and the Soviet Union took place. A series that meant a lot on the ice in terms of its hockey implications, but also found itself being a pretty significant geopolitical event as well. For his thoughts on this, let's bring in Liam Maguire. Liam is an NHL historian and author of 4 books on the subject and joins us from my old hometown of Ottawa, Ontario. Mr. Maguire, thank you for making time for us today. We appreciate it.
Dave, pleasure to be with you.
So, Liam, I'm curious. I set up the juxtaposition there in the intro. What do you think? Do you think the legacy of this series has more to do with geopolitics or more to do with its influence on the game of hockey?
Wow, that's a really tough question because I think it was significantly important on both those fronts. I mean, the game of hockey changed dramatically, not the least of which is every single European player or former East Bloc player or from a former East Bloc country that's cashing a paycheck in North America anywhere today at any level owes their very existence and ability to earn that living thanks to the Summit Series and how it played out, let alone what transpired in the game in terms of training and all of the other intricacies that go into being a good hockey team that they incorporated from us and we incorporated from them. That's on the ice. Off the ice, the way you set that up, Dave, boy, I'll tell you, it was an absolute firecracker of a month that was centered around a sport, and yet the implications in terms of politics were so much more than just a hockey series. So I don't know that there's one that's more impactful than the other. I think they both are just massively linked together and forever will be. And for that reason, it's why it's the most significant sporting moment in Canadian and hockey history.
That's me being a very ungracious host, forcing you into a binary like that on the first question, but you stick-handled it very, very well as you were coming down the wing. Let's talk about the hockey here, because as you say, this was a huge moment for European and Eastern Bloc players, and now we're talking about an NHL that is just loaded with talent from all over the world.
Right.
What did Team Canada know about the Soviet style of hockey going into the series?
We actually had more knowledge available to us than unfortunately than they ended up using to any degree of preparation. Harry Sinden, who came out of retirement essentially to coach the team, played against the Soviets numerous times. He was with the Whitby Dunlops when they won the World Championship. I mean, he tried to tell the guys. There was several other players on the team, Rod Sealing, Brian Glennie on the roster. He didn't play during the 8 games, but on the roster. They had won medals for Canada in previous Olympics, albeit bronze, but they had experience playing against the Soviets and tried to tell their brethren that these guys are good. They can play the game. And nobody was listening. Nobody cared. Everything that was said by the Toronto Maple Leaf scouts who went over and scouted Tretiak and saw the poor equipment and saw the bizarre training and circling on the ice and anything they caught in any ice time that they saw prior to the series, nobody gave it an ounce of respect. And as a result, on that Saturday night, September 2nd, 1972, the hockey world was shook to its core, and none more so than here in Canada. So it will stand the test of time from game 1 and right through the rest of the month. And keep in mind, when I say European, what a lot of people over time seem to have forgotten, because we're now several generations beyond those who actually have active memories of watching it. We played 2 games right now, 50 years ago at this time. We were in Sweden. We were practicing every day on the big ice to get used to it, and we, in just a few days' time, 50 years ago, would play our first of 2 games against the Swedish national team. Then after we won Game 8, on that Thursday, September 28th, we flew to what was then Czechoslovakia and played their national team, who actually were the defending world champions at that time. So we played, in 4 countries, 3 teams in a month. And that's why it's not just the fact that we came back and did what we did largely on Paul Henderson's back, but it was also what happened in Sweden and what happened in Czechoslovakia. Because next thing you know, those players are flooding over to North America.
Mm-hmm.
They've been seen for the first time. Gloria Soloming, Inga Hammerstrom, Tommy Bergnum, Lars-Erik Sjöberg, Peter Stastny, all of these guys. Vladislav Nedomansky, who just went in the Hall of Fame a couple of years ago. So it was a critically important month for a lot of reasons, and it fashioned us the greatest sporting moment in Canadian history. But it has so much more widespread, impactful associations.
I think you just laid it out in that answer. But in terms of the growth of the sport, where do you think we'd be right now without something like the Summit Series? Things like the World Juniors or the Canada Cup or the or pro athletes, NHLers going to the Olympics. Where do you think we'd be without a series like 72?
Well, again, another really great question. Let's say for whatever reason it doesn't happen. And the WHA definitely don't do theirs in 74. It absolutely would not have. And the World Juniors actually started in 1974, and they started as an exhibition tournament. It became a fully sanctioned International Ice Hockey Federation event in 1977. We, Canada, didn't send a national team until 1982. We were sending club teams that had won the Memorial Cup the year before, and then the next year lose half their roster and send over a team. We're getting killed. Then we sent our first national team in 82, and we won gold. Does any of that start without the Summit Series? Probably, but not in the time period that it did, for sure, and maybe not even in the fashion that it did, to be perfectly honest. The Summit Series, and as I said, those games against Sweden and then Czechoslovakia, it whetted our appetite. It 100% led to the Canada Cup starting in 1976, and that time Bobby Orr played and Bobby Hull played, and that is the greatest team ever assembled at one time, that Canadian team from the Canada Cup in 1976. There were 18 Hall of Famers on that roster.
Wow.
But 72 gave us the greatest, most dramatic, most triumphant, and the beginning, really, of two things. Number one, it was the first time ever in this country that anything was called Team Canada. First time ever. And now you can send over all walks of life and anything. If you're wearing the maple leaf on a crest, on a shirt or a suit or anything, you're part of Team Canada. That all started in 1972. The second thing it gave us was this entire mantra of Canadians never giving up, of fighting to the last minute. Something that got lost post-Second World War and leading right up to the Summit Series as we became a different type of country, that came crashing back and has been championed by countless hundreds upon hundreds of men, women, boys, and girls representing our country in all different aspects. That never give up attitude, winning those last three games on Moscow ice, under the most incredible duress imaginable on and off the ice, is what it single-handedly has made an identity of Canadians 50 years ago.
Liam, so oftentimes we hear about the Paul Henderson goal. Pretty much anybody I talk to over the age of 60 years old can tell me where they were when that goal went in, whether it was watching on TV in a school gymnasium or listening to the radio at work or wherever it may be. I'm curious, beyond the Henderson goal, do you have an enduring memory from the series?
Well, yeah, hundreds. I mean, I look at, you're talking to a guy here who has gotten to know all of these men, those that are still with us. We've lost 10. I know them all intimately. We're the best of friends. I have emceed their events for most of the 2000s numerous times, and I was 13 years old. That was a life-altering moment for me, that series. I'm a massive hockey guy. My entire class was. I was in grade 8 at St. Leonard's in Manotick that Thursday afternoon in Pat Jennings' class, and when Henderson scored, it was a life-altering moment for me, and it has stayed that way through time. So I got lots of memories. My favorite player of all time is Yvon Cornway, the goal he scored in Toronto in Game 2. Pete Mahalich, his shorthanded goal in that same game. Phil Esposito's speech at the conclusion of the game in Vancouver on Friday night, September 8, 1972, should be shown in every single Canadian school every September. it should be shown. You know what that speech did, Dave? That speech rallied this country. The players never saw it. The players didn't see it for months, some of them not for years. There was no VCRs or VHSs or Betamaxes in those days. There was no late night 24-hour sports channel that, yeah, let's just flip it on and see what happened tonight. There was none of that, right? So what that speech did, if you think about this, in 1972, 50 years ago, that speech rallied 3,000 Canadians, 3,000 men and women, got on a plane and flew to Moscow in 1972.
Wow.
To support the team. And to a man, those players will tell you, those that are still with us, God bless them all, that was critically important in their comeback. And do I have an endearing moment? I mean, I like literally every game. Sadly, the ones we lost, of course, are seared in my mind. But yeah, I mean, Paul's goal in Game 7 with 2:06 to play was a 4-on-4, and he beat every guy on the ice, and he roofed it over Tretiak. It's one of the nicest goals you'll see in hockey history. All they needed was a tie. The Soviets just needed one tie in those last 3 games. We win them all by 1 goal. The same guy gets the winner in all 3 games. He gets the winner with 2:06 to play in Game 7 and 34 seconds to go in Game 8. Do I have a memory? Buddy, listen, I can quote you chapter verse from Game 1 to Game 8 and everything in between. So, yeah, I got a memory.
I suspect when you've written as many books as you have, yes, it definitely implies there's more than just one enduring memory. Liam, we're so appreciative for your perspective and passion this morning. I know you're doing excellent work around the Ottawa area in terms of so much sports programming and across the country. Thank you for making a little bit of time for us today.
My pleasure, Dave. Thank you for having me on such a significant anniversary.
That's Liam Maguire, a hockey historian, NHL historian, and an author of 4 books on the game. Liam Maguire, one of the best there is. Do you want to dive into more conversations like this? Watch Now with Dave Brown weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on AMI-TV or download the podcasts wherever you listen. Do you want to dive into more conversations like this? Watch Now with Dave Brown weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on AMI-TV or download the podcasts wherever you listen.